Alright, so today we're looking at diatonic chords, which is basically a fancy way of saying the chords that exist within a key. So this is helpful if you're trying to write something because it tells you what chords are available to you. And it's also interesting if you're trying to analyze a song to see what key it's in. Or if you need to play a solo over something, it definitely helps to know what key you're in. So it pretty much all comes down to the major scale. That's what gives you all your available notes. So in this case, we're going to look at a C major scale. I'm going to go up, starting from this C at the 3rd fret, and I'm going to go up the one string just so it's a little easier to see. But any version of a major scale will give you all the same answers. So, if we're starting on C, that's our first note. It's a whole step to note 2, whole step to note 3, half step to note 4, whole step to note 5, whole step to note 6, whole step to note 7, and half step back to note 8, or technically 1 again. So you can think of it as 8 or 1, they're the same thing. So every one of those spots is where we have a chord that we can play. The part that we now have to memorize is which ones will be major chords, minor chords, and there's also one in there that's going to be a diminished chord as well. So the first chord, our number 1 note, our home bass, is always major. So that would be a C major chord. Now it doesn't have to be a bar chord, it can be an open chord, it could be any version of a C chord that you want, but as long as it's a C chord. When we move up to note 2, 2 is always minor, so D minor. When we move up to note 3, note 3 is also always minor, E minor. The 4th note, in this case, that the 3 to 4 half step, is F, and the 4th note is always major, no matter where you put it. The 5th note, G, in this case, always major. So note 5, always major. When we get up to note 6, 6 is always minor. So in this case, A minor. The next note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which is B in this case, is always diminished. So this is the one weird one that pops up in this case. And then our half step back to 8 or note 1. So we're back to C, the same chord that we started on. So those are all the chord options that you would have if you were in the key of C. If you did that scale starting from any other note for a different key, you'd get all the chords that would be in that key. So all the chords we just looked at those were all 3-note chords or triad type of chords. So there's only 3 notes in all of those chords. The other option would be to play bigger, more expanded chords, which would be 4-part chords. So instead of having C, for example, you could have a C major 7 chord. So 1 is always major, or major 7 if you want to expand it. When you move to chord 2, which was always minor, you could also make it a minor 7 chord. Technically a little bit bigger, more expanded chord. Chord 3 was minor, it could also be minor 7 if you want it to be 4-part. The 4th chord, always major, could be a major 7 chord again. The 5 chord, which was major, in this case the 5 chord's a little different. We don't turn this major into a major 7 like we did with 1 and 4. This one turns into a dominant 7 chord, or just 7, plain old 7. So in this case it was a G major chord, we could make it a G7 chord, otherwise known as a G dominant 7 chord. And then our 6th chord, minor, could be minor 7. The 7th one, the weird diminished one, if we change that to a 4-part chord, there's 2 possible names for it. Minor 7 flat 5, that's usually the note, the name that I give to it. Some people also like to call it half diminished. So whether you hear someone say minor 7 or minor 7 flat 5 or half diminished, they're talking about the same chord. which would be, and then we're back to 1 major, or 1 major 7 again. So those are the options for staying within a key. It's important to know that if you're analyzing songs or writing songs, that not all songs do stay completely within a key. So sometimes there's a bit of a problem child in there somewhere, and you kind of have to say to yourself, is that a key change? Is that something that fits in there? But this is usually where most chords get pulled from until there is some kind of a key change. So there's going to be a couple different ways of playing all these chords. For the major bar chords, this is one way of doing it. Another way of playing the same chord would be to, instead of barring here, do all 3 fingers like this, fingers 2, 3, and 4, and then put your bar here. Now that lets you play all the way to the high E string. So if you do it this way, only the middle 4 strings. If you do it this way, you can use 5 strings. For the minor chords, pretty much these are the common ones: minor, minor 7. For the dominant chords, just either regular major or the dominant 7. For the minor 7 flat 5, the weird diminished spot, you could do that 2 ways. You could either do like that, using all 4 of those fingers, or it's also common to use fingers 2 and 3 here and bar the rest. So whether you do it this way or this way, the same chords, just whichever way you prefer to play it. Now all of these types of chords, those were all on the A string. All of those chords could also be played on the E string. So if we were in the key of G, for example, we have a G major chord or a G major 7 chord, if we want to make it a 4-part. For the 2 chord, we have A minor or A minor 7. Now this is one we have 2 possibilities for. One way is to just get rid of that pinky. The other way would be to put 1 finger here up on the top, finger 2, and then use your 3rd finger to bar the rest of the strings, and we leave that A string out of there. So both different possibilities for the same exact chord. The 3 chord would be the same options. The 4 chord was just like the 1 chord, either major or major 7. Now when we get to that 5 chord, that's the one that could be either major or dominant 7, or in this case D7, which we could just take that pinky out. That would be option 1. The other common way that you see this played would be like this. So we now avoid the A string and the E string this way. So this makes it less strings to play, but all the important notes are there. Those are both the same chord. 6 is the minor 7, or minor again, and then the minor 7 flat 5 up here would look like this. That would be the 4-part version, and the 3-part version, the diminished chord, would be this. So you got finger 1, finger 2, finger 3, and finger 1 is also barring this note. So not playing the top 2 strings there. So multiple versions of how you could play some of these chords, but the idea is to know for notes 1 through 7 of the scale what the 3-note possibilities are for your chords and what the 4-note possibilities are for your chords. And then you can basically mix and match them however you want to. And that's how you communicate with other musicians. For example, if someone said, we're in the key of G, right? And they said, let's play a 2-5-1. That would mean we go and find note 2, which we know has to be a minor chord or a minor 7 chord. And we say it's a 2-5-1, so now we got to find the 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is a D, so we could either play a D major chord or a D7 chord. D, D7, D, D7, all different versions of the same thing. and then the 1 chord, either G or G major 7. So this would be a 2-5-1 in the key of G with triad or 3-part chords. This would be the same thing with the 4-part chords. Right, so 2-5-1, that's a really common progression, so it's worth trying to do that in a whole bunch of different keys. Another really common progression would be a 1-4-5, so it's worth finding that and trying to sample it in all the different keys. And if you do it with these movable shapes that we just looked at, instead of, let's say, open position chords, you'll find that you could you create a pattern for one of those, like 2-5-1, and that pattern will stay the same. If A was our key now, if this was the 1 and 2 is here, we'd have the same pattern for a 2-5-1. If this was the 1 and this was our 2, this would be our new 2-5-1. So you take these same shapes and you can just move them all over the place. Try them with 3-part chords, try them with 4-part chords, and then try them in different keys. Pick random numbers. Say to yourself, I'm going to try a 3-6-5 progression. Maybe you don't even use the 1 chord. And then see if you can sample it with all the different types of chords. So if you learn all those shapes and memorize which ones have to be majors and minors and diminished, or major 7, minor 7s, dominant 7s, and minor 7 flat 5s, that gives you all the possibilities you could need to stay within a key and pick chords that you know you can't lose with. Otherwise, there's also plenty of other chords that you can change keys with, and there's certainly no rules that say we can't do that. So that's how we use diatonic chords to our advantage.